the consequence. So the first step that you have to do is to identifying the data collection measures and how to collect the database behavior. So on the right hand side, you can see that there's a sample of frequency data collection sheet. What you have to do is when you're collecting data for the differential reinforcement, it is important to focus on the frequency, topography, and the intensity or severity of the behavior that I just mentioned in step 2. So the data collection measures identified above are used along with the information scattered in step 1 and 2 to help determine the nature of the interfering behavior prior to the interventions. So during the baseline phase, it is important to collect the data for a long enough period of time to see if there is some consistency in the behavior. Teachers should decide how long data will be collected, for example, 1 week or 2 weeks, and what will happen if there are not enough data to inform interventions. Baseline data collection allows the teacher to assess the impact of interventions on the interviewing behavior over time. Typically, the behavior should be observed for 3 or more days in different settings. So the first fourth steps come to selecting a differential reinforcement procedures. So there is a matrix which may be helpful in making decisions about which procedures to be used. So you can see that still the same 4 important criteria that we have to look into, that is the topography, the severity, the frequency of interfering behavior, the impact of the environment, as well as what procedures to be considered. For example, if the behavior is very unacceptable, for like students look extremely out of place and odd, like he's trolling in their cycles in the lunch room. So actually it's quite severe and intense, and the frequency it happens very constantly, and it also affects the others because it's very distracting and very disruptive. So we may consider to use DRI, which is an incompatible behavior. For example, he needs to be sit down. That's why he can't twirl in the circle during lunchtime. So when we deciding which procedure to use, we have to first identify the functional similar behavior, to determine the type and amount of functional skills, determine how frequently this desired behavior occur, and consider the topography, and also consider their own professional judgment and comfort level with the proposed procedures. So now you can start to create an intervention plan. So when we're creating a differential reinforcement intervention plan, we need to address several features. For example, it will be beneficial to define other procedures that will be incorporated. For example, like extension, functional communication training with the differential reinforcement procedures. For example, a teacher who decides to use differential reinforcement for biting may also need to use functional communication training to teach the learners how to make requests. Secondly, to administer a reinforced assessment to identify learner preferred objects and activities that can be used as reward for demonstrating the replacement behavior. And then the teacher also needs to administer a reinforcement assessment to identify learner preferred objects and activity that can be used as reward for demonstrating the replacement behavior. The goal is to motivate the learner with tangible rewards for demonstrating a more positive, acceptable behavior that serve the same functions as the problem behavior. Excuse me. Also, the practitioners may need to determine a schedule of reinforcement, means how frequently the reinforcer is delivered. For example, decide on whether the learner gets a reward every time he engages in the replacement behavior or a reward for going 10 minutes without engaging in the interfering behavior. Furthermore, we should establish a criteria for changing the schedule of reinforcement. For example, after 3 sessions in which the learner is reinforced every 5 minutes, are we going to make it more difficult and challenging by reinforce every 10 minutes for the following 3 sessions? Last but not least, we have to specify the timeline for data collection. For example, the team may decide that the data should be reviewed after 1 week of implementation, or it would be great that you can clearly write out intervention plans and make it available to other team members. So the sixth step would be how we implement the interventions. Of course, before the interfering behavior occur, we should choose which behavior to reinforce based on the intervention plan, explicitly teach the replacement or alternative skills. This may be done by using the FCT, task analysis, graduate guidance, or the kind of direct teaching procedures such as DTT. For example, if the replacement behavior is requesting a break, so teacher may need to teach the learner how to request a break using a picture or scripts, etc. Also, you have to continuously reinforce the other low rate, alternative, incompatible behavior. So to continuously reinforce, rapidly reinforce every instance of the replacement behavior at the beginning. For example, if you're reinforcing a learner for remaining seated, provide reinforcement the entire time the learner is in his seat. Also, you would like to match the reinforcement to the functions of the behavior because the function of learners' interfering behavior can change. It is important to confirm that your interventions always matches the hypothesized functions of interfering behavior. For example, the function of calling out behavior may initially be for attention and may later shift to escape. So the DR procedure must change as well to reinforce the function of the replacement behavior, say not calling out. If the desired behavior does not occur, prompt and immediately reinforce the prompt desired behavior. So the next step would be collecting outcome data. Of course, to determine the effectiveness of the DR procedures and whether modifications are necessary, um, so we should continuously assessing the data, like ABC frequency intensity data, and also consulting the original assessment and baseline data to ensure that they are using the same measures. For example, if the frequency of original behavior was assessed during baseline, assess the frequency of the desired behavior to monitor the process. So here's the last steps is we have to review and modify the intervention plan from time to time. First, we have to review the outcome data and discuss the result with our teammate. Secondly, summarize the result, making sure to include both baseline and outcome measures. We have to identify any new interfering behavior that may be emerge or assess them for functions. Modify the intervention plan depending on the baseline and outcome data. Last but not least, conduct an ongoing checks of intervention effectiveness. So here are some frequently asked questions. For example, someone may ask, what is the difference between the DRI and DRA? Actually, DRI delivers reinforcement for behavior that is topographically dissimilar to the problem behavior, and in this way, the replacement behavior and the problem behavior cannot be displayed at the same time. Examples might include reinforcing in-seat behavior that I just mentioned before instead of out-seat behavior, or working on homework instead of sleeping at a desk. DRA reinforced occurrence of a target behavior that is different from the problem behavior, but not necessarily topographically incompatible. For example, teaching a child to ask for items instead of hitting another child would not prevent both behavior from occurring at the same time, but strengthening the former help to minimize the latter from occurring. And other questions would be, when would it be appropriate appropriate to use DRL. Actually, it is an appropriate procedure to use when the goal is not to eliminate a behavior, but to reduce its occurrence to a more acceptable level. There are many behaviors that, when used in excess, must be irritating or annoying, and DRL offers effective strategies to reduce these behaviors to tolerable rates. Example may include question asking, talking out loud, rapid eating, or frequent hair brushing. Keep in mind that these procedures require constant observations and timing and frequent reinforcement. Which may be hard to implement in a room full of learners. It may require additional personnel, especially in the initial stage. So the last questions would be, is there any one differential reinforcement procedure that is better than the others? Mm, the short answer is that each comes with both advantage and disadvantage. DRI, DRA, and DRO aim to strengthen behavior to replace an inappropriate or problematic behavior, whereas DRL attempts to reduce but not eliminate a behavior. DRO actually does not specify which behavior to reinforce, but DRO does allow a wide number of behavior to be reinforced. It is impossible that for the DRO to develop and strengthen collateral or non-target behavior that are important for the learner to sustain progress. The main difference is that with DRI or DRA, the adder measures the development of the incompatible or alternative behavior and target behavior, whereas with DRO, the learner's behavior determines which alternative behavior will be targeted and measured. Overall, the decision of which differential reinforcement to be used should be made by observing and collecting data of the problem behavior across relevant people, environment, and context, and also determined by the type of replacement behavior to introduce in lieu of the problem behavior. Finally, the parents and learners should also be interviewed to determine which procedure will enable the most significant positive change to occur and lead to the enhanced quality of the life for the entire family. Oh, so this is the end of my presentation. Thank you.